The landscapes of our lives are for learning, where experience is our teacher. When we gather together to share our resources, we are destined to love and thrive. Good morning, Pierre.
Good morning. Good morning, Maureen. Woo. This is great. What are we talking about?
Well, I am unprepared, but apparently you are. So you want to talk about a book that you are currently reading, or have you read it?
Yeah, I'm currently reading. I'm deep enough into it. I don't know about, I don't know, 100 pages or so, maybe a third of the way through the book, but it's compelling from the beginning. So yeah, I'd like to talk about it. It's another resource podcast, and the resource this morning is another Harari, but a very different guy, Yuval Noah Harari. He's a historian.
Israeli, right? Israeli.
He is. He's Israeli, British educated, PhD out of Oxford. Lectured.
In history? What's his PhD in?
I think.
I don't think it's history. I think it's something unrelated to like the book he wrote.
Let me see.
Sorry.
Let me just. I'm going to Google that.
I'll Google it, and you can start talking about the book.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Yeah, I'd be interested to know, because I did read that, and I think he studied a few different things.
Okay, no, he is a historian. Professor. Yeah. Professor in the Department of History at Hebrew University in Jerusalem.
Yeah. Yeah. So I assume probably that's what his PhD is in. But I thought I read that he studied a bunch of different areas.
Well, social philosophy, it says, big history, his fields are big history and social philosophy. So social philosophy is a little different than history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I'm reading his book, Sapiens, which was published in 2014. The subtitle is A Brief History of Humankind. And for me, when somebody is a crystal clear writer, oh, wow, and also takes on a book that has a sweeping breadth, breadth. It just, I just love it. And here's the first paragraph about 13.5 billion years ago. Matter, energy, time, space came into being in what is known as the Big Bang. The story of these fundamental features of our universe is called physics. And then the next paragraph, 300,000 years later, the appearance of matter, energy started to coalesce into complex structures called atoms. The story of atoms, molecules, and their interactions is called chemistry. And then, it's just so cool. And then he just drops into when creatures came onto the earth and humans started to appear. And the way he gets into who humans were, and Homo sapiens, genus and species, there were other species of Homo or humans. So there were other types of humans, Neanderthals, Homo erectus. There were actually quite a few. And then sapiens, which means wise, and you can question that when you read the book, basically wiped these other people off the planet, as we did many other species.
Yeah.
Our force on the planet here has been uniquely destructive. But that's not, it's not really, he's not saying that with any kind of judgment
Yeah.
or like, kind of woke, kind of
Right.
perspective. It's like he's just rolling out the facts, and they make you stop in your tracks. The part that I've gotten to in the book that I find really interesting is the development of culture and what Homo sapiens were able to do. They were able to leapfrog their genetics by creating stories. And I thought you would love this for the podcast.
Yeah.
By creating stories that are not, they're not true. And he has a word for it. It's not a lie, but it's kind of like a
mythology.
It's not a myth. I wish I had the book right in front of me. I don't. It's an intercultural accepted norm.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a fiction, but it's something that everybody believes in, like the dollar, or people are created equal, or people are not created equal, because
Gravity?
there's a caste, and obviously the king is
Gravity?
sacred, divinely placed here by God. All these things and these socially accepted norms, even though they're fictions and we could look at them as lies, but they're not in the same category. These fictions are what bring us together.
Beliefs. I mean,
yes, beliefs, cultural beliefs, and once he argues, once you get a group over about 150 people, you need a belief system that allows everybody to kind of go out there and do this thing for the group. But without a belief system that's kind of part of this cultural packaging of large populations, we would not be able to hold together. And
so coherence,
right.
Yeah.
And the power of all of this is evident in how we've dominated the planet, and not so wisely as our species name would indicate. So just a good book. So I wanted to share it here.
Yeah, I just have that question about what's the definition of destructive and how it just automatically has a negative connotation. I was thinking about, we talked about graphic novels before we got on here, and one of the graphic novels that I taught when I was teaching was Alan Moore. He's a British graphic novelist. Alan Moore, he wrote The Watchmen, which is pretty famous because they made a movie out of it, and also V for Vendetta, which they made a movie out of that too. And the movies aren't the same as the graphic novels, and the graphic novels are way better. And even Alan Moore would say that. He actually didn't even want to be involved with the production in film. Okay. So V for Vendetta, one of the main themes is like, there are the destroyers and the creators as sort of just part of the natural order of things, and especially, socio-politically, culturally, right. That there are, like destruction and creation are like yin and yang. They kind of go hand in hand. And when you think about it that way, destruction doesn't have like we're destroy. Like I think one of the examples, and I don't know if he gave it or somebody, I heard this somewhere else, is like when you're using a fork and a knife and you're cutting into a piece of meat, like you're being destructive. Like we destroy things all the time, right? We do. So I'm trying to like pump up it's not such a negative connotation. And you mentioned it, not like the woke, like we've ruined the environment and all that, but I think it's important to talk about destruction as a term. But anyways,
well, just to come back. No, I really appreciate that. And I think that, supporting some of the views. We do destroy environments, and it's amazing when you look at it, just how much destruction there's been. And when you get behind and understand that how we put together our society is through myth, if I can use that word, and then I don't know, it's like when you do some self-realization work, you realize that you're operating under a myth, but if you didn't have a myth, you would be something very different, maybe a violent mess, as a society, and sort of anarchistic or something. I don't know. It's just a book.
Well, and that in V for Vendetta, that was a big part of it, was like, oh my God, what did you just say? Like, it was like chaos. And so it was like the end of something, and then it needed to, like, the slate needed to be wiped clean of this terrible dictatorship or whatever the social thing was, and so that something new could grow. And I'm thinking of, I know I didn't read the whole book Sapiens, but I know a lot of it involves like the beginning of agriculture. And I've heard other people say like the beginning of agriculture was kind of like the beginning of the end of like we ruined things by settling in one place and starting to do agriculture. I don't know if you've got that far in the book.
Oh yeah, that's a big part,
right?
Of,
so it's like a destruction in one sense, but bountiful, like creating.
Well, it's true.
Too.
It's true, but it's also true. People have a myth that hunter and gatherers lived in this harmony, but all of this is, like you said, it's this process of creation and destruction. The hunter and gatherers destroyed, they destroyed all the large mammals like instantly. They were just smart. They got together in groups. They forced them off of cliffs. They boxed them in canyons. They slaughtered them terribly. And these creatures were gigantic. He talks about them. And little old man, and there's like a 4,000 pound wombat rat that just sat there and ate things. And they were all over the place and gone. Humans arrived, gone.
Well, but couldn't you argue that that's just the natural order of things? Just like humans appeared out of the slop and the whatever, we became tubes and then grew the prefrontal cortex and all of that. Like that all just came to be out of whatever, Big Bang, nothing, whatever.
Oh, right.
And so like, can't you just keep that in the same storyline of context? Like, oh, they were, and even
I guess what I was trying to say is exactly what you're saying. It wasn't just when we got to agriculture that we were destructive, and it wasn't just us who's destructive. Creatures live in this other world, and how we think of ourselves as being not destructive or destructive is more of a construct. There is a natural order of things, and it varies, and
isn't it wild how the human mind evolved to then create constructs that we now judge ourselves by and live in according to? I think that's just wild. And then we could go into the whole consciousness thing, right? But
well, it's cool. I mean, you mentioned that he's got some other books, and I just want to mention them for listeners. He wrote Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind in 2014. 2 years later, he writes Homo Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow. And then the book you read, 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, he writes 2 years later in 2018. So very prolific.
Yeah. I remember watching, I think I have some videos of him on my website. I remember writing a blog and including a video that he talked about. He was kind of warning about AI way back in 2014, 15, like way back. But like back then, social media, how it was going to impact kids and how it was already impact. Like he was kind of, I remember listening to him talk a lot about those things. And I think that 21 Rules for the 21st Century is about those kind of things, like current culture. And I, like I said to you before we started, I know meditation. He's a meditator, and meditation was one of, I guess, his not solutions, but something to practice that might help with how to live in the 21st century.
That's
and
cool.
I was puzzled. I was like, this guy's a historian writing these books. Like, what is he talking about? Like, with like, how does meditation connect to like, AI? Like, how are those two things connected? But I won't spoil it for people. Read his book.
Yeah, no, 25 million copies sold. The Guardian newspaper credited Sapiens, the book, with revolutionizing the nonfiction market and popularizing brainy books. And he's writing these books apparently every 2 years. After 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, Sapiens, he's in 2020, becomes a graphic novel history, kind of a radical adaptation of the original to make it more accessible. And then in 2022, he writes Unstoppable Us for middle schoolers, young children, where he tells the unbelievable true story of humans and our insatiable appetite for things. So this is just a cool guy who's available at different levels, with the graphic novel for the kids, and then his first book, which is it's pretty serious, very readable, but cool. Yeah. Cool. Well, anyway, that's my extent of preparedness for this morning. And I found it interesting because I picked up the book at my sister-in-law's and I saw Harari, and I didn't know who he was. And we had talked about a different Harari, on attention deficit disorder. But this guy is definitely can keep his attention and keep my attention through the book.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm Maureen from Landscapes for Learning. Learn to live, live to learn.
Ooh, wow. That transition was great. Great. And I'm Pierre from Yoga Heals Everywhere. Peace through grace, my friends. I'm so happy for just being alive today. Peace through grace.